Dragon Age Origins was rated M for mature by the ESRB and contains blood, intense violence, language, partial nudity, and sexual content. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, my name is Amaronith and I play games for the internet, and today we're playing Dragon Age Origins. Having completed the Landsmeet, I think it's time for another Codex reading. Article 48, The Summer Sword. In 884 Blessed, Lord Aurelian of Montsamad, the champion of the Grand Tourney of Ansburg, commissioned a sword for his youngest son Louis, who aspired to the Chevaliers. Insisting that his boy have nothing but the best, Lord Aurelian sought out the most renowned mastersmith in the Orlesian Empire, Rasen of Halamsharal, who was at the time nearly 80, and begged the old man to make the blade. Rasen refused. His sight was failing him, and he had no wish to come out of retirement, but Aurelian offered an exorbitant sum of gold and eventually overcame the artisan's resistance. The old master labored for several months, folding steel, honing the edge to perfection. The resulting blade was as long as a man as tall and sharp as the tongue of any noblewoman. Rasen proclaimed it his greatest work and named it, in a fit of irony, the Summer Sword, since he had crafted it in the winter of his lifetime. Lord Aurelian brought Louis with him to receive the sword from the hand of the old master. When the boy saw the Summer Sword, he turned up his nose at his father's gift. Such great two-handed blades were no longer in fashion at court. He preferred an estoc. Aurelian was mortified. He insisted that Louis carry the blade, and apologized to Rasen, but to no avail. The swordsmith cursed the boy, saying that for his pride, regardless of the blade he carried, he would fail anyway. Louis was eventually knighted and joined the ranks of the Chevalier. In 898 Blessed, he was appointed command of the Chevaliers in Denerim, and hoped to make a name for himself. And so he did. He was the most detested Chevalier in Ferelden, well known for his acts of depravity. In 9-1 Dragon, he met Loghain Mac Tir in battle at Avanash. Louis lost his estoc early in the fighting, became separated from his men, and ended up facing down Loghain himself, armed only with the Summer Sword, which he had never before drawn. Practice might have saved him where pride did not. Loghain made short work of the pompous Chevalier and took the greatsword as a trophy. Culture and History. Article 104, Antiva. In the rest of the civilized world, it is common belief that Antiva has no king. I assure you, gentle readers, that this is untrue. The line of kings in Antiva has remained unbroken for 2,500 years. It is simply that nobody pays any attention to them whatsoever. The nation is ruled in truth by a collection of merchant princes. They are not princes in the literal sense, but heads of banks, trading companies, and vineyards. Their power is conferred strictly by wealth. But Antiva is not primarily renowned for its particular form of government, nor for its admittedly unparalleled wines. Antiva is known for the House of Crows. Since Antivans are well known for being good at everything but fighting, it is more than a little ironic that Antiva possesses the most deadly assassins in the world. Their fame is such that Antiva keeps no standing army. No king is willing to order his troops to assault her borders, and no general is mad enough to lead such an invasion. The attack would likely succeed, but its leaders would not see the day. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Genetivi. Article 106, The Bannorn. The central Ferelden Valley has always been a paradox. No single ban holds more than a few dozen leagues of farmland, yet together they govern a greater territory than all the Tyrans. I can never remember how it's pronounced, I'm sorry. Tyrans and Arls combined. This collection of independent bands is known as the Bannorn, and it is the heart of the Ferelden politics. No person has ever sat upon the throne of Ferelden without first winning the approval of the Bannorn. Queen Fionn, who had the misfortune to take the throne in the 18th year of the Steel Age, 18th year of the Steel Age, wrote of the Bannorn, "There have been 3 wars in this year fought over elopements, 5 fought over wool, and 1 started by an apple tree. It isn't even winter yet. Who would believe that these same bands, now trying so hard to kill one another just last year, united to give me the crown?" From Ferelden, Folklore and History, by Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. Article 111. Alienage Culture. There have always been alienages. They have been around for as long as elves and shems have lived in the same lands. Ours isn't even the worst. They say that Val Royeaux has 10,000 elves living in a space no bigger than Dunram's Market. Their walls are supposedly so high that daylight doesn't reach the Vhenadahl until midday. But don't be so anxious to start tearing down the walls and picking fights with the guards. They keep out more than they keep in. We don't have to live here, you know. Sometimes a family gets a good break and they buy a house in the docks or the outskirts of town. If they're lucky, they come back to the alienage after looters have burned their house down. The unlucky ones just go to the pauper's field. Here we're among family. We look out for each other. Here we do what we can to remember the old ways. The flat ears who have gone out there, they're stuck. They'll never be human, and they've gone and thrown away being elven too. So where does that leave them? Nowhere. Serethia, Haran of the Highever alienage. Article 118. History of Ferelden, Chapter 2. The occupation was a dark blot on Ferelden's history. Our people, who from time immemorial valued their freedom over all else, were forced to bow to Orlesian rule. The Empire declared our elves property and sold them like cattle. Chevaliers routinely plundered freeholds of coin, food, and even women and children, and excused it as taxation. For 70 years no landsmeet were held, for the imperial throne had declared our ancient laws a form of treason. King Brandel was one of those who escaped. He tried to organize the other fugitive lords to retake their lands, but Brandel was neither clever nor persuasive, and the nobles preferred to take their chances alone. Ferelden might still be little more than a territory of the Empire were it not for the fact that his daughter had all the charisma and that her royal father lacked. The rebel queen's rule began with a midnight attack on the imperial armory at Lothering. It was swift and successful, and with their pilfered arms the rebels began a campaign against the Orlesians in earnest. But the turning point of the war came when a young freeholder joined the Queen's army. The lad, Loghain Mac Tir, possessed a remarkable talent for strategy, and quickly became the favorite advisor of young Prince Merrick. The Queen finally died at the hands of Orlesian sympathizers, anxious to curry favor with their painted masters, and Merrick took her place as the leader of the rebellion. Loghain became Merrick's right hand. Merrick and Loghain led the rebels in a new campaign against their Orlesian oppressors, culminating in the Battle of River Dane, where the last chevaliers in Dunram were crushed. With the capital once more in the hands of the Fereldens, the battle to free our people was finally over, but the battle to rebuild what had been lost had only just begun. From Ferelden, Folklore and History, by Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. Article 122. The Free Marches. The Free Marches are not a kingdom, nor even a nation in the most basic sense. People from that region dislike even being lumped together as marchers. Rather, they are a collection of independent city-states, united only when it suits them. In this respect, they resemble the Bannorn before the arrival of King Calenhad. Because of this, the Free Marches have no capital, and what passes for a central government exists only sporadically, a sort of landsmeet that convenes only during times of crisis. I arrived in time for the grand tourney when it was on in Tantervale, a remarkable sight indeed. I saw Avar hillsmen test their mettle against Orlesian chevaliers, riders from the Underfells buying Navaran cavalry horses, and Tevan craftsmen selling their wares to Tevinter mages. All of Thedas was on display. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, by Brother Genitivi. Article 125. Gwaren. The human settlement of Gwaren is built directly on top of a dwarven outpost by the same name. Prior to the first Blight, in a time when Ferelden was not yet a nation and was still carved up into barbarian tribes, the outpost served as a sort of as a source of salt and a means by which dwarves could reach the sea lanes of the Amaranthine Ocean. Unwilling to come to the surface, the dwarves made an agreement with the local Tirn to build a port and relied on the humans to ferry goods between the ships and the underground outpost. This made Gwaren a prosperous place and extraordinarily wealthy for a time. When in the Divine Age the dwarven kingdoms fell to the Darkspawn and the deep roads were closed off, so too did the dwarves disappear from Gwaren. The human settlement, the envy of the surrounding barbarian tribes, was assaulted and sacked, its wealth stolen. The town remained, however, and despite its remote location, continued to find value as a source of fish and timber. As the first settlement liberated by King Maric and Loghain during the Ferelden Rebellion, Gwaren was eventually granted to Loghain when he became Tirn in 911 Dragon. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. Article 126. Highever. Castle Highever has stood since the Divine Age, when it was not an independent Bannorn, but merely an outpost of the growing Bannorn of Amaranthine, in the days before Amaranthine became an Arling itself. The outpost of Highever was originally held by the Elston family, cousins of the Howes. In the Age of Towers, however, Ban Conobar Elston was murdered by his wife Flemeth, thus ending the bloodline. Conobar's captain of the guard, Sarim Cusland, took the lands and title. The Cusland declared their independence from Amaranthine, starting a war that lasted 30 years. When the dust settled, Highever was on its own and in possession of half the land that had once been southwestern Amaranthine. Highever became a Tirnir during the Black Age, when Helia Cusland gathered the lords together under her banner to drive the werewolves out of their lands, earning herself the title of Tirna, almost as an afterthought. Today, Highever is one of only 2 remaining Tirnirs, making the Cusland family second in rank only to the king. Arl Howe of Amaranthine was named the new Tirn of Highever under somewhat questionable circumstances, and the fate of the Cusland family is now uncertain. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. Article 131. The Noble Families of Ferelden. The occupation left empty castles in its wake. Whole families were butchered in the initial invasion, and all those who couldn't or wouldn't bend knee to the Emperor's puppet king were declared traitors and hunted. Many bloodlines ended on chevalier's blades at dusty crossroads, in forest clearings, or in freeholds. And then there were the turncoats. To curry favor with their new masters, some nobles took up arms against their brothers. They betrayed and murdered the rebel queen, an act that created even more vacant titles and lands once King Maric exacted justice. That Ferelden did not fall apart after the Orlesians left is a testament to the strength of King Maric. The old families still held grudges against those who had sided with the Emperor, and those new families that had been granted titles were viewed as interlopers. The landsmeets that followed Maric's coronation were tense, to say the least. From Ferelden, Folklore and History by Sister Patrine, Chantry Scholar. Article 150. Vollen, the Occupied North. In the 30th year of the Steel Age, the first Qunari ships were sighted off the coast of Vollen in the far north, marking the beginning of a new age of warfare. History calls this the First Qunari War, but it was mostly a one-sided bloodbath, with the Qunari advancing far into the mainland. Qunari warriors in glittering steel armor carved through armies with ease. Their cannons, the likes of which our ancestors had never seen, reduced city walls to rubble in a matter of seconds. Stories of Qunari occupation vary greatly. It is said they dismantled families and sent captives to learning camps for indoctrination into their religion. Those who refused to cooperate disappeared into mines or construction camps. For every tale of suffering, however, there is another of enlightenment deriving from something called the Qun. This is either a philosophical code or a written text that governs all aspects of Qunari life, perhaps both. One converted Saharan reported pity for those who refused to embrace the Qun, as if the conquerors had led him to some sort of self-discovery. to a sort of self-discovery. For all my life I followed the Maker wherever his path led me, he wrote, but in the Qun I have found the means to travel my own path. It has been said that the most complete way to wipe out a people is not with blades but with books. Thankfully, a world that has repelled 4 blights would not easily bow to a foreign aggressor, and so the exalted marches began. The greatest advantage of the Chantry-led forges was the Circle of Magi. For all their technology, the Qunari appeared to harbor great hatred for magic. Faced with cannons, the Chantry responded with lightning and balls of fire. The Qunari armies lacked the sheer numbers of humanity, so many were slain at Marnus Pal on both sides, that the Vale is said to be permanently sundered, and the ruins still plagued by restless corpses. But each year the Chantry pushed further and further into Qunari lines, although local converts to the Qun proved difficult to return to Andraste's teachings. By the end of the Storm Age, the Qunari were truly pushed back. Ravain was the only human land that retained the Qunari religion after being freed, and its rulers attempted to barter a peace. Most human lands signed the Lamaran Accord, accepting the Tevinter Imperium. It is a shaky peace that has lasted to this day. From the Exalted Marches, an examination of Chantry warfare, by Sister Petrine, Chantry scholar. Article 157. Vhenadahl, the Tree of the People. Mostly the old ways are gone. Each generation forgets a little more of the old tongue, a little more of the traditions, and the few things we keep become simple habits, the meaning long since faded. So it is with the Vhenadahl, the Tree of the People. Every alienage has one, I'm told, or they used to. When I was a little girl, my mother told me the tree was a symbol of Arlathan, but not even she knew more. Keeping the Vhenadahl is just a habit now. Many cities have let theirs wither and die, then chop them up for firewood. No great loss. Sarathia, Harin of the Highever alienage. I wonder, have I found the 2 that I'm missing in, like, other places? I'll have to look. Boy, oh boy. Here we go. We've met all the characters, too. This is neat. Article 163. Queen Anora. We have been given the gift of freedom by our forebearers. Let us not squander it. The only child of the war hero Loghain Mac Tir, Anora has never been one to stay quietly in the background. It is common knowledge that in the 5 years Anora and Kaelin held the throne together, she was the one wielding the power. She is held in much higher esteem than her husband by the people of Ferelden, nobility and commoners alike, and commands the respect of even foreign nations, having once inspired Empress Celine of Orlais to declare, "Anora of Ferelden is a solitary rose among brambles." She sent her maid, Erlina, to Arl Eamon's estate to ask for Faria's help in escaping from Arl Howe, but as they fled Howe's estate, Anora in disguise, they were ambushed by Sir Cauthrien, there to arrest Howe's murderer. A fight ensued, and Anora fled in the confusion. She made her way to Eamon's Danarum estate, and there offered her aid in defeating her father at the Landsmeet. With her help, Loghain's support was eroded. The bands fell in line behind Eamon and Faria. Loghain, however, would not accept defeat easily. He filled the room with troops and attempted a coup. Fighting erupted, breaking the long tradition of the Landsmeet, which was ultimately settled with a duel. In the end, Anora was granted the throne, freeing Alistair from the burden of a responsibility he never wanted anyway. Alistair has no update to his... Weird. Article 166. Sir Cauthrien. Some of us know what honor and loyalty are. Cauthrien came to Loghain's service the hard way. She belonged to a poor family and was out doing work on the farm when she saw a man on horseback being attacked by several bandits. She rushed to his assistance and found out belatedly that the man she saved was none other than the great hero Loghain. Though she was hardly more than a child, he took her in, offering her offering her a position with his soldiers, and she climbed through the ranks through sheer determination. Becoming the commander of Merrick's shield, Loghain's elite soldiers, was the proudest moment of her life. She was slain trying to stop Faria from entering the Landsmeet. Article 170. Arl Eamon Guerrin. Nobility does not exist without obligation. We owe all we have, even our lives, to our land and our people. As the maternal uncle of King Caelin, Arl Eamon is one of the king's most trusted advisors. Redcliffe, while not a large or especially wealthy part of Ferelden, is a critical strategic location. The fortress guards the western pass that leads to Orlais, as well as the major trade route with Orzammar. A well-respected man, though not the most charismatic, King Caelin once said of him, "My uncle Eamon is a man everyone thinks well of, when they remember to think of him at all." He fell ill with a mysterious condition that not even magic could treat. It was no common ailment. Eamon was poisoned by blood mage Jowan, who claimed to be working for Teyrn Loghain. The Jarl's life was saved only by the most extraordinary measure, finding the urn of sacred ashes, the remains of Andraste herself. His health restored, Eamon called the Landsmeet with the goal of wresting power from Loghain and placing Alistair on the throne. With the question of succession settled, Eamon returned to Redcliffe to prepare the castle's defences for the encroaching Blight. Article 176. Arl Rendon Howe. It appears that it will be a civil war after all, despite the Darkspawn. Pity. The Arling of Amaranthine winds along the sinuous northeastern coast of Ferelden. The waking sea is known for its temper, and the storms that sweep in from the warmer northern waters are sudden and brutal. These are the lands of Rendon Howe. He was born during the occupation, and like many of the nobles at the time, joined Prince Merrick's rebels. He fought alongside young Bryce Cousland, the future Tyrn of Highever, and Leonis Bryland, future Arl of Southreach, at the bloody Battle of White River. It was the most catastrophic defeat of the entire occupation, from which only 50 rebel soldiers escaped alive. Although he was decorated for valor by King Merrick, Howe's abrasive manners have earned him almost universal dislike among his peers. Howe died at the hands of Faria and Bannorn. Article 180. Loghain Mac Tir. War is cruel. Every soul who has fought alongside Merrick knows this, and in it there is no such things as innocence. There is only the living and the dead, and the degrees of guilt both bear. Loghain was born a farmer during a time when his country was under foreign occupation, when he was still a boy. Under foreign occupation. When he was still a boy, he joined the resistance, where his considerable tactical genius quickly became apparent. He became close friends with Prince Merrick, the last true heir to the Ferelden throne, and together they led the rebels to drive out the forces of the Elysian Empire. Merrick raised his friend to the nobility, and Loghain is now more of a symbol than a man. He represents the Ferelden ideals of hard work and independence. During the battle at Ostagar, he fled the field, leaving King Caelin and the Grey Wardens to die. He then returned to Bannorn and declared himself the regent to his daughter Queen Anora, demanding that Ferelden follow him against the Darkspawn, upsetting a great many of the bands. His actions sparked a civil war. Loghain supporters found themselves fighting their neighbors who blamed Loghain for the death of the king, as well as those who simply wished to take advantage of the power vacuum. He was defeated in single combat at the Landsmeet and summarily executed. Article 186. Valendrian. Remember that our strength lies in commitment to tradition and to each other. Every alienage has a Haran, an elder. It falls to the Haran to arrange marriages for those without family, to negotiate with the guards when there is trouble, and to act as the sort of mayor and surrogate uncle to the people of the alienage. The title, like so many things, is a holdover from the time of Arlathan, for Harans are not necessarily the oldest person in their community, or even all that old. Tradition gives the role to the oldest soul, the wisest, cleverest, and most level-headed. Valendrian has been Haran of the Bannorn alienage since he was in his 30s. He was nearly shipped out to Tevinter by slavers, but was returned to the alienage by Faria. Article 194. Meditations and Odes to Bees. O fair damsel of the garden, Arlessa of honeysuckle and rose, I humbly beg your gracious pardon for the offence that here arose. Surely your work is far too vital to be interrupted by one like me. I am in no way entitled to earn the notice of a honey bee. I was a fool to pluck. Wow. I was a fool to pluck that flower for my lady fair. On my honor, I swear to bring you dozens more within the hour, if you give me leave to try. Listen, traveler, if you would walk the garden path some spring, mind that you don't trespass, for the gardeners do sting. Anonymous. Article 210. Feast day fish. Fluffy mackerel pudding. 2 stalks celery, 1 green pepper, half a pound of poached mackerel, 1 small onion finely diced, 2 teaspoons of mustard, 1 teaspoon salt, half teaspoon ground Antivan pepper, 1/8 teaspoon ground mace, dash of ground cardamom seed, 2 eggs beaten, 2 eggs boiled and sliced for garnish. This book, found in Arl Eamon's estate, naturally falls open to this page. Article 214. The First Blight. Chapter 4. Founded at Weishaupt Fortress in the Anderfels, the Grey Wardens offered humanity hope in its darkest hour. Veterans of decades of battles with the Darkspawn came together, and the best among them pledged to do whatever was necessary to stem the tide of darkness that swept across the land. These great humans, elves, and dwarves pooled their knowledge of the enemy and formed a united front to put a stop to the archdemon's rampage. And stop it they did. Ballads are still sung today of the first Grey Warden charge into the waves of Darkspawn at the city of Nordbotten, each warden facing 10 or 20 Darkspawn at a time. Squadrons of Grey Wardens mounted on their mighty griffins, soaring through the blackest skies and battling the terrible archdemon with spear and spell. Oh, what a sight it must have been! Incredibly, the Grey Wardens won that first battle. They raised their arms in victory, and suddenly there was hope. The Grey Wardens led the lands of men and the last stalwart defenders of the dwarven halls against the hordes of the archdemon Dumat for the next 100 years, gaining and losing ground, but never backing away. From all over Thedas, they recruited whomever possessed the skill and strength to raise the Grey Warden banner, making no distinction between elven slave or human nobleman. And finally, nearly 2 centuries after the first old god rose from the earth, the Grey Wardens assembled the armies of men and dwarves at the Battle of Silent Fields. It was then that Dumat finally fell, and the first Blight ended. The Tevinter Imperium would face a new challenge with the coming of the Prophet Andraste. Thoughts of the Blight grew distant. With Dumat's defeat, the Darkspawn were no longer considered a threat. But with the wisdom of hindsight, we know that conceit proved foolish indeed. The task of the Grey Wardens was far from over. From Tales of the Destruction of Thedas by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. And that's all we've picked up. Really, from here, no updated anything. Oh, pardon me. So, yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode, this Codex reading, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.